we're going to kick things off with a quick overview from our director, Dale England, and we're going to provide some background information about Press Forward and the open call, just for those who were not able to attend our information session a few weeks ago. Then we are going to open it up for Q&A, so please use the Q&A feature to be able to submit your questions. Dale, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, and hello to everybody. And I hope you've been able to go onto our website and start your applications. Next slide. I want to just remind us of where we sit and why Press Forward was even started. We understand that local news is so vitally important to our nation, for our democracy, small d, and that without that local news, we are ending up having lots of debates, not always easy debates, at the national level. It turns out local news is really about bringing us together, understanding your neighbors, and that information is incredibly vital. So Press Forward is about raising money and organizing foundations and recruiting new foundations into supporting local news, but it's also more than the money. It really is about building a movement so that people will understand that local news needs to be supported, both monetarily and otherwise, and that we need that as a vital part of our democracy, not just national news. We understand that, and so far we've done really well. As you can see from this chart, we started in September when Press Forward was first announced at about 22 funders. We're now almost triple that number. And that includes a number of local foundations through our local chapters. We're actually now up to 25 local chapters, all the way from Alaska to South Florida. And we've still committed that $500 million and trying to raise money on top of that to support local news. Next slide. We always want people to understand how Press Forward is structured. And so we're structured, if you are an investor, if you are a funder, either a foundation or an individual donor, in 3 ways. You can invest in 3 ways with us and say that you're a part of Press Forward. We have, like I described, our local chapters, and those are smaller chapters around the country. They can be city-based, county-based, state-based, but they are almost creating mini Press Forwards. They're foundations leading the charge, but working with their journalism outlets on figuring out what are the needs in your community, however you define it. And those are our locals. We also have foundations that want to pool their dollars, bring them together to support innovation and new things happening in the field. And the open call that we're talking about today is from those pooled fund dollars. And then the largest bucket right now is our aligned grant making. And those are from mostly national foundations and high net worth individuals who do their own independent grant making, but have agreed to do that grant making on top of what they normally would have done in the journalism space. Many of them are new to journalism completely and never funded in the space, but they agree to a learning journey and to coordinate their actions and to learn from each other so that a few years from now, we can have a better sense among those foundations and those donors of what would be the best things to fund in journalism, because right now there's not agreed upon. So just know that of the $500 million that has been committed so far, $400 million is in that aligned grant-making bucket, and the smaller amounts are in the pooled and in the locals. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Christina.
Thank you, Dale. Next slide, please. So we're going to cover a little bit about the open call, and I want to plug our website, pressforward.news/opencall. This is where you can find our program guidelines in English and in Spanish. You can find a recording of our last information session, and you can also sign up for office hours and fundraising coaching that has been brought to us by our partners at the Lenfest Institute for Journalism. Next slide, please. So to give a recap of this first open call, Press Forward is deliberately focused on bridging gaps in local coverage. Through this opportunity, we will invest in small local newsrooms that are closing long-standing inequities by producing and providing original reporting to underserved communities. How you are addressing long-standing inequities may look different from region to region. So for some of you, you may be specifically focused on serving community of colors. Others, you're serving rural areas, low wealth communities, or other groups that are currently not being served, reached, or represented by other outlets in your area. Through this cycle, we plan to award 100 newsrooms of grants around $100,000. The grant period will be 2 years, and grants will be paid out over that time frame, and they will be given as general operating support. This means that Press Forward will not have any strict guidelines on how to use the funding. Next slide, please. So what types of organizations can apply for this open call? You must be a US-based local news outlet focused on providing and producing original reporting. Our definition of local is generous. We know that for some, this is really hyper-local, a neighborhood within a city or a county. And we understand that in some parts of our country, local can be a state. Your operating budget for this year must be under $1 million. And if you are a local news outlet that's under $1 million, but you're affiliated with a larger parent organization, you can still apply as long as you meet all other additional criteria. So when you are preparing your application, answer the questions on behalf of your outlet, not your parent organizations. For-profits, 501c3 nonprofits, and college newsrooms are eligible. If you're a for-profit, you do not need to have a fiscal sponsor. And then finally, you must have been in operation since September of last year and demonstrate an ongoing commitment to editorial excellence, editorial independence, and transparency. All right, so I think with that, we are going to invite Dale back and have Lindsay Linzer, the Vice President of Community Investments at the Miami Foundation, to guide us through our Q&A.
Good afternoon. Good to see you all. Happy to be back here and answer the questions that are coming in fast. So just a reminder for anyone on the webinar today, please put your questions in the Q&A and we'll either address them verbally on this webinar or type in an answer if it's a quick answer. So we have over 30 questions here in the queue, and so here they come. The first question, this is for you, Christina. Is there anything we should keep in mind regarding letters and videos of endorsement from community members on our behalf?
So I want to say that this is an optional attachment that you can include. If you take a look at our application, you can see that we're only asking a few questions. So this is an opportunity for you to share a little bit more about your organization than things that you may want us to realize. I would say in terms of video, keep them short. We have a recommended time limit. And regarding, letters or the content, we want to know how you sit within your community, how you are serving your community. So keep those things in mind.
Thank you. This next one's for you, Dale. How important is it that the entity receiving the funding also be ethnically diverse?
So, when we have defined local news, gaps in local news, equity for us means multiple things. And so we understand that we're trying to support groups that are ethnically diverse, yes, because many of them have not been represented in the news in the past. But we're also looking at groups where it might be rural areas where there's been gap coverage. It might be parts of cities where there was no group or targeted population was covered. So ethnic is one definition of equity. It's not the only definition that we will be using. Just know that we are trying to get a range of organizations across the country. So we don't want everybody to come from California, for example, even though we love California. So just know that's what we're thinking very broadly about equity. We don't just mean people of color. I know that that's what a lot of people think, but we don't just mean that.
Perfect. Thank you, Dale. Next one's for you, Christina. Does the operating budget refer to the newsroom budget or to the entire organization's budget?
So as I mentioned, if you are affiliated with the parent organization, please apply on behalf of the newsroom that fits the local criteria and is under the $1 million threshold.
Perfect. Thank you. And another one for you, Christina. Can you further explain what's needed in the financial needs section and the optional notes section? How should those fields be leveraged?
So in the requirements and the attachments, we are asking for a budget. So we do want to see some numbers. But if you have an optional section under financial need, you can include a quick narrative about the financial picture, or if there's any additional context that you would like us to see or understand about your current financial, any additional context beyond the numbers.
Sticking with the theme of that financial needs section, another question here. Can you please share the distinction between the top financial needs section and then the application's closing question about what Press Forward's funding would enable for the organization? Are you looking for different information here?
So Dale, feel free to chime in, but one of the ways that I see the distinction between this, with the last question, what would press forward funding enable for your organization? We want to think about what does the growth and future of your organization look like? Going back to the criteria and around sustainability, we want to know how funding could catalyze growth for your organization, whether that's investments in infrastructure and tools, investments in staff, or allowing you to enable something you wouldn't otherwise. In terms of financial need, this is where, again, you can provide specific information, whether you want us to know about any existing funding that has come in or may grants that maybe that you have active, or if you want us to learn a little bit more specific around the financial element of it.
Thank you. This one's for you, Dale. There's been a lot of discussion about filling gaps. However, our news service is serving an entire news desert of 21,000 people. Are we still qualified for these grants?
Absolutely. That's a gap. We're not saying how many people. It could be 2,000, it could be 50,000. We understand that there are just a number of people that are not being served at all. We have not made any, we're not making a judgment call on the numbers of people that you are serving. It's just on the budget size of your organization.
Perfect. Thank you. And they keep coming in. We're up to 60 questions now. Another one for you, Dale. What types of examples are you looking for in the question regarding examples of news coverage?
So we know that many of you are spending a lot of time thinking about what's the information that the people that you serve want to see, and what's the information that they need to see. And so give us examples of how you have done original reporting, how you've paid attention to particular issues that you think are important to that community. If you've done it differently, digital or print, whatever. If you've highlighted, it could be anything, a government issue. It could be you've highlighted talking about something, a person or a group in the community in a way that they've not been highlighted before. I think what we really want to see is just that how do you understand your audience? How are you representing your community? We just want to give examples of that because that tells us a little bit about you. It's a way to describe you. That just gives us a sense of, are you just telling stories that anybody could tell just on government agencies? Or are you going deeper and really thinking about things that your audience needs to know? So it's really the range.
Perfect. Thank you. Next one's for you, Christina. I have a question about the team description section. Press forward directions say to include the vision for how to serve the community in this section, but the Just Fund information button says to describe your team structure. Can you clarify what should go in this section?
That's a good question. And just to clarify, this is related to your profile, which will also be seen by other funders, not just press forward funders. So you can think about how you want to use that section, whether it's now, or maybe you may also want to change it after this open call period. So since this is really all about serving community information needs, one of the ways that you could use this is to describe how your team leadership is reflective of the community that you intend to serve, or what are the different qualities or leadership experiences that make the person leading your organization be able to have a way to be able to guide the organization and fulfill that mission adequately. We want to see, is this somebody that is rooted in the community, understands the community, has made efforts to build inroads or that network of community support that allows your organization to satisfy those news and information needs.
Perfect. Love that the questions keep coming. Here's an easy one. We're a local radio station, an independent entity within our university. I want to confirm that the radio station, not the university, should submit the application, and is the university the fiscal sponsor? So yes, the radio station in this case would be the applicant, and if the money is going to be sent to the university, they would in fact be kind of classified as the fiscal sponsor wherever the payment is being made. The next question for Dale. I'm interested in being a collaborator on another organization's application. Is that allowed, and are collaborators allowed to appear on multiple grant applications?
I think the answer is yes. We'll have to, check back as we start to make decisions. But if it's an independent, or if they're two independent organizations and they're collaborating with sometimes the same people. That can happen. That happens a lot when you're in the foundation world. So I guess the answer is yes. It might not be we pick both of you, right? Just understand that. But we're gonna evaluate you independently.
Perfect. Thank you. Over to you, Christina. Can you clarify what documents in particular you will need for budget?
We just would like to see your budget that includes your revenue and your expenses for 2024.
Perfect. Thank you. And then there's another question about budget. So our organization operates on a shoestring budget with most of the services being pro bono. The templates seem to be very nonprofit based. So we don't know what we should include in our budget for press forward purposes. Should we include, the pro bono amounts, what we think we're going to need for website upgrades? What should we include on our budget?
Mm-hmm.
So one, I also want to plug the fundraising coaching sessions. So if you have not taken advantage of that, you can sign up for 30 minutes to go through strategy and even talk through the presentation of this situation, whether that's in the narrative or in the financials. I would say put together your 2024 operating budget, even ones that perhaps may have been approved or ones that your organization is using to guide the activities of this year, and use that to submit.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Dale, this next one's for you. What determines whether an organization is considered a journalism support organization versus a local newsroom? If we are helping to create stories that would not otherwise appear, how are we designated as one versus the other? And if we're really a hybrid of both, should we apply?
If you are doing original reporting in any way, shape, or form, we consider you an outlet. We do understand that there are some hybrid organizations, and if probably more than half your budget is going more toward the original reporting, I would apply. It will be up to our reviewers. This is new for us, and so we will be kind of considering all types of organizations. But most of the journalism support organizations that we see are ones where they are not doing original reporting. They are really doing infrastructure, capacity building, support for multiple outlets, often not just one outlet. If you are some type of a hybrid, go ahead and apply, but please explain, especially even within your budget, like what % of the budget goes toward the reporting side and what goes towards the support side, and who are you supporting? Are you supporting multiple outlets, just one outlet? I mean, I think we'd want to know some of that because you're going to be a little bit different than most of the groups that apply.
Thank you, Dale. Another one for you, Dale. Does local refer only to geography or also to segments or communities in other dimensions?
Yeah, for now, for us, local has meant geography. Let me be clear. At some point later, we might get more sophisticated than that. But right now, it's meant, are there particular geographies? But the geography could be hyper local, right? A neighborhood. It could be part of a city. It could be a county. It could be a state. We have not targeted populations necessarily. Like just think of different types of populations. We've narrowed it mostly to geography for now because that's the easiest way for us to compare you guys.
Perfect. Thank you. We got a question here about the budget template on the site being for nonprofits. Should for-profit entities use the same template? So we actually didn't provide a budget template as part of this. We're allowing organizations to use whatever template makes sense for you to best convey to us what is the operating budget of your organization. So if you have any questions, please feel free. Specifically, you can send us an email offline, but there is no set budget template that you have to use. Christina, this next one's for you. Does the business plan have to be one page?
No, it can be one page or it can be longer. So we want to be able to see how you're thinking about the growth of your organization. So it could be a one-page overview. If it's something more produced and something that has been created alongside your leadership and board, you can include that too. You can also look at a lean canvas template chart and fill out that as well.
Thank you. This one's for you, Dale. Can you speak more towards how the reviewers will judge the applications holistically? I'm interested in hearing if small rural areas will be considered equally as large cities.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you to I think over 100 people that have signed up to be reviewers for us. They really are a range of they play a range of roles right now. Some are at foundations, some are journalists themselves, some are from journalism support organizations, some are at universities. So we're trying to make sure that every application is read by a minimum of 2, maybe 3 reviewers, so that you're not just being judged by a person from a foundation or just a person who's been a journalist. We really want the mixture of lenses to just look at your application as a start. And then in particular, we're not going to be, we're separating out applications 500 and 500,000 and below, 500,000 and up, and nonprofit and for-profit. We're trying not to compare apples and oranges. Within those buckets, we understand we'll get some rural places, we'll get some urban. To be honest, of the 100, we want to mix, right? There's no way we will grant this to just 100 urban outlets. There's no way we'll do 100 rural. We really are trying to get a mixture, because we want to learn from you all and bring you all together so that you can learn from each other, and to be able to show other outlets how we can figure out ways for you guys to work together. So you'll see the range of grantees. We're trying not to, pick too many rural, too many urban, suburban. I mean, we just know there's gaps in coverage everywhere. And so we're trying to be able to represent that in the 100 grantees.
Thank you, Dale. Over to you, Christina. So our local major foundation doesn't want to participate in Press Forward. Should we as a local nonprofit news outlet be looking for other funders to start a local chapter?
So I believe this question refers to Press Forward local chapters, not the open call. So I'll address this really quickly before we go back to the open call. So local chapters, as Dale said in the intro, are like mini Press Forward donor collaboratives that are launching in local ecosystems to support local news, just like we are doing at the national level. They must be led by funders. So if your foundation isn't interested, you can have conversations. And if you want to be able to have one of us have a conversation, we're also happy to do that too.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dale. What does a successful grant application look like?
We want to see outlets that are showing us in your application that you are wrestling with and trying to figure out how to understand your audience, because we know audiences are changing. We want organizations that are willing to collaborate. We're hoping that most of the grantees, once selected, will be, if you're not already in a collaborative somehow, that you're willing to go into one around all different types. We'll customize them just so you guys can be sharing information. So we're looking for outlets that, can show us what's the gap in coverage, what went away, what's not happening because the coverage is not, because you're not there or not being able to cover it in the way that you would like. We want groups that are thinking about what do I need to do and how do I need to think about sustainability going forward? What are my options? Who am I trying to hire? How am I learning from others? So I'll just say we want people that are thinking broadly and thinking inventively, if that's a word, about what your future looks like. And you can describe that. Even if you don't have all the answers, are you even asking yourself and your team and your partners the questions? We understand that getting to the answers could take a while.
Perfect. Thank you, Dale. Really appreciate it. All right. Now someone wants to see the crystal ball into the future. Will there be a future open call for proposals that's explicitly for journalism support organizations?
Unclear. Just know that we have 4 pillars for Press Forward. They are infrastructure, locals, which we're dealing with through our local chapters, equity, which we're getting at through this open call, and policy. And so expect to see more types of grants over time, be they open call or other types of grant opportunities in those 4 pillar areas. We've not determined yet exactly what they look like. Would they all be open calls like this? Or would some might be invite only? We have a lot of foundations, they all operate differently. And we're working out what the future of grant making looks like. But just also know that our aligned grant makers are in the middle. While we're all doing this open call work, they are doing their own independent grant making. And so we are also making sure when you fill out that Just Fund profile, that information about you, whether you match, whether you qualify for this open call, and whether you you are selected for this open call, that information still will go out to our aligned funders, so they have a better way of seeing all of you. We have many foundations that have not funded in journalism before. They don't know your organization. And so we're trying to get a way for them to see you, to see the range of things that exist in the universe, so that they can get a much better sense of how they can fund going forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Dale. Christina, there's some curiosity about whether there are word limit counts and character limit counts on the application. I think in some places it says 300 words or 1,000 words. So are there limits on the questions?
So in our program guidelines, we have recommendations. We recommend 500 words. If you go into Just Fund, they have this on the technical platform. They do have their recommended limits. We encourage you to just follow what we outline in the Press Forward program guidelines.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So another budget related question for Christina. So related to the operating budget for 2024, do we have to show a balanced budget, or is it okay to show a profit, or is it okay to show a loss? Since this is an estimated budget, should we include a potential grant from Press Forward in the estimated income for 2024?
No, do not include a grant from Press Forward. And please just show us a clear picture of what 2024 looks like, whether that is profit or loss. Don't just show us what a realistic picture looks like.
We're not going to penalize you if you've got a profit. We understand that most for-profits, especially in these smaller outlets, the profit is not a lot, and we're fine with that.
Perfect. Some additional questions about going back to kind of word counts in the application. I see 3 questions with a max of 500 words. Are those the only questions I'm supposed to be answering?
Yes, so we specifically chose Just Fund as our grant making platform. They take a common application approach, and this really is to make it an easy lift on applicants. So we are only asking for 3 questions, as well as the requirement attachments that we outlined in the program guidelines. And that's it.
Perfect. Thank you. A question here about college newsrooms. So college newsrooms are a little different than other newsrooms. Like, for example, we don't publish in the summer. Will that be a disadvantage? And additionally, our fiscal sponsors are college, which has a budget larger than $1 million. Where should we explain this within the application? Should we use the optional information box?
We don't publish. Additionally,
Say that. I'm sorry. Say that. Was that to me?
So no, I mean, yeah, Christina, I think it's probably for you. It's just a question that college newsrooms are different and don't publish during the summer. Is that going to be a disadvantage? And should they use the budget for their university, which is larger than 1,000, or the budget for the newsroom that's specific to the college newspaper?
So I would recommend applying on behalf of the paper, and we want to be able to see how you're filling those coverage gaps. So again, whether or not you report in the summer, really think about how your organization is reporting to the public, reporting to the public, and serving a community need.
Thank you. Dale, this one's for you. We're a public media station with a newsroom. Should we or can we separate the news operating budget from the rest of the station's budget?
Right now, we are taking your whole organization's budget. So we understand that there are some organizations that may have a $3 million budget, but the newsroom part of it is only $1 million. To us, you are a $4 million organization. So I know that's not ideal for some people, but we really are trying to limit it to the groups that are the smallest of ours, of what we do. And we had to do that at some point because this is a start. There'll be more open calls. We'll learn as we go. But just know right now, we really are taking your whole organization's budget.
Perfect. Thank you. Christina, so we are a volunteer-only group right now. We're applying through a nonprofit fiscal sponsor, but it may not be done and in place before the application deadline. Is that okay?
So this goes back to the eligibility criteria that you must be in operation since September of 2023. So I would say if you, I would say it may be too early. But if you have any more specific questions, please email grants@pressforward.news, and we can also try to address your specific scenario.
Thank you. Dale, if we have 3 publications in our group, should we combine them or do we break them each individually and apply 3 different times?
Do they have 3 different budgets? We really are just going by budget size. If they are 3 separate entities and they either have 3 completely different budgets or 3 different nonprofits, you have 3 501c3s, then they would apply separately. For some reason they are together. What does a together mean? I mean, if you're a for-profit and if you add up all their budgets together and it ends up being under $1 million, then go ahead and apply together. But if you add them up and it's over $1 million, then they should probably apply separately. But they need to be independent entities. That's the issue.
Perfect. Thank you, Dale. Dale, I think this goes to a question we've already answered, but it's very specific. Do LGBTQ communities, especially outside of large cities, count as underserved?
They are if you're in a geography. We understand that we have target populations that are hard to serve. That for this open call, we have defined local as geography. If you say to us, you are in any community, rural, urban, or whatever, and you know that there are 10,000 people in that community that are LGBTQ, and that's a coverage, but there's still, it's a little bit of both, right? The LGBTQ and they're in a particularly defined locality, I can see that. It's hard for us right now to manage target populations that are broad across multiple localities. So for this open call, think local geography, and within the geography, if there are particular target populations that you want to get at, feel free to apply.
Perfect. Thank you. Christina, we have a timeline question. How soon will we know if we've been awarded? Can we reapply regardless of past acceptance?
So after the deadline passes on June 12th, we will move into our evaluation period. Our reviewers will spend the summer looking at all of the applications, and we plan to announce final grantees by early fall in September. So if you are not awarded a grant, you are eligible to apply for future open calls as long as you meet the criteria of the eligibility criteria for those open calls. If you are awarded a grant, you will not be able to apply during the period of your active grant with Press Forward.
Perfect. Thank you. Dale, question for you. How specific do you want us to be in explaining how arid our news desert is?
Be as specific as possible. Talk about entities that used to be there that are no longer there. Talk about issues that are not being watched or talked about and they're so vital. So I'll give an example. I was talking to a community and I just said, what are the issues that are not being covered? And they all had answers. Somebody said, we've got a group of people living in a part of the county that now no one is paying attention to. There's housing issues and water issues, and there's no outlet to really cover what are really meaty issues for this community. Talk about that. Give us an example, both of what used to be there maybe and what's not there, and talk about even more so because it's not there, what's not happening. How are things, and how do you understand that? Any of that I think would be useful to us to describe as detailed as you can in the word limit that we've set, so that it paints a picture for us of what that community looks like and what the desert looks like.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Another question for you, Dale. Are you planning to distribute funding equally across 50 states, i.e. about 2 grants per state, or is it contingent on the applications received?
Contingent on the applications received.
Perfect. Thank you. We have a question here, and I'm going to try to answer it. So there's a question about curiosity why for-profit news outlets are eligible to apply, but not federally recognized 501c4 nonprofits, even if the grant application specified that funds would not be used for political purposes. And so again, we have to ensure that based on the sources of our funding, that the funding is not used for political purposes, which is why we're saying no C4s. If you want to apply under kind of your business entity, these grants are being given as general operating support, which is tricky when we're giving grants to C4s, which is why we say no grants to C4s, because we're not able to do an unrestricted grant to a C4 through this open call.
And let me just add, one of our pillars is policy. We're forming a policy working group. We will be thinking about how to support C4s in the future. We're just not there yet. We're starting with C3s. They're easier. We can control exactly a little bit more where the money goes. So don't assume that that will never be the case. It's just not right now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. There's a question about how much funding we should apply for if our budget is around $160,000 a year, or is it just $100,000 for all grantees?
We had 100,000 as the max. Some people might get less. I'm going to tell you as a foundation person, but don't tell them I told you this. You always apply for the max. And then we'll figure it out from there. But don't second guess yourself. Go ahead and apply for the max. But we know that there might be a range of grant amounts awarded.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So a question for you, Christina. If a national organization provides hyper-local data journalism coverage in all jurisdictions, does that qualify as local?
No, because you are still a national organization.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Question for you, Dale. For community members writing a letter, making a video of support, is there a page on Press Forward's website we can point them to that outlines what the letter or video should contain?
I don't think so.
Mm-mm.
No, it's just tell us why they support you. Is there an article or a series of articles that you did that they liked, or some important issue in the community that you covered that nobody else did? We just want to see that you have a relationship with your audience.
Yep, terrific. Thank you. So another, please look into the crystal ball, Dale. How many applicants are expected to apply for the 100 grants?
No clue. You know, we can't tell if we're going to get 200 applicants or 500 applicants. I will just say our funders are also eager to know that. And, you know, we're trying to think about ways. We're just remember, we're learning from every open call. And so if it feels like we got 600 applications and we can only fund 100, I think we need to go back to our funders and say we need some more money. So please apply and let us know who's out there. Remember, half of our foundations at maybe more have rarely funded in this space. This is a learning opportunity for them too, to understand what's out there, what's in their region, things that they may not even have heard of before. You won't even be on the map if you didn't at least fill out that Just Fund profile and apply.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, we got that question multiple times about how many applications we're going to receive. And then somebody said, well, to estimate, look at the past cycles, but there is no past cycles because this is the first time that we're doing.
Yeah, we're brand new.
Exactly. Christina, we got the question, do we need just the 2024 budget or would we like to see 2023 as well?
2024 operating budget.
Perfect. And I'll just add on, if in the narrative place, it makes sense to explain if there's been a big jump or a big decline or something you want to explain for context, please use kind of the open answer questions to, you know, explain anything you might want to, but we're only requiring as an attachment the 2024 operating budget. What if our fiscal year is different than calendar year? Should we use our current fiscal year? Yes, we are giving the directive that when we say 2024 budget, we're 2024 fiscal. So for some folks, it's calendar year. For some folks, it's not. Whatever your organization deems your fiscal year to be for 2024, please give us the number and the attachment based on that. Okay. Let's see here. In the last session, a lean Canvas format was said to be an option for the business/strategic plan, but there are several lean Canvas formats. Is there a specific one that's acceptable? Christina?
So Lean Canvas is a framework to help you think through your business plan. And if there are variations that fit you, just submit. You can tailor it as long as you can tailor it to fit your organization. So pick the template or a modified template that shows us how you're thinking about your growth and how you're thinking about your sustainability.
Perfect. Thank you. We have a question here, Dale, that says, I'm an unpaid one-person staff providing information to a population over 100,000, supported solely by a handful of advertisers. Am I eligible to apply?
Yes, you are. And you can use the money to pay yourself. Honestly, general operating means general operating. And as long as you can show in your application that you've been doing something, that you're supporting that community in some way, shape, or form, you are eligible.
Perfect. We got a question here. Where can we sign up for the 30-minute guidance session that Christina just mentioned? So if you take a look at the webinar chat, you'll see in here, it's the www.lenfest.org with the Press Forward coaching page. And one of my teammates will go ahead and repost that in here. So I know we had a question before about, the grant size, and while it's expected that the top will be 100 over 2 years, the question is, are we considering smaller grants like $50,000 over 2 years for smaller newsrooms?
Yeah, we might. We definitely might do that. All to be determined, but that's an option on the table.
Perfect. Thank you. There's a question about the best types of attachments to use as part of the application. Is it better to provide PDFs for the samples of the work, or should we provide a link to the website to show the information where it's provided, or should we do both?
I believe you can do both.
Perfect. Thank you. And as again, another question about showing examples of the outlet's coverage. What is a sample of the outlet's coverage? Should we submit stories or the latest issue of our publication? For example, we're a weekly newspaper in rural Alaska.
So,
or Christina.
Oh, I would say whatever you think is able to demonstrate your impact, whether that's a story that you're really proud of that made traction within your community, or even a representative example, whether that is the latest issue. Again, think back to the narrative and how you're answering that questions and how the examples of coverage continue to add to that story that you're telling.
Perfect, thank you. Christina, another question here about Just Fund. So I've filled out the Just Fund application, but have not clicked the button to publish it yet. If I publish the Just Fund application, can I edit it later after I fill out the Press Forward application?
Yes, so you can always update your profile on Just Fund, but once you submit your Press Forward application to the open call, you will not be able to make changes to that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we had a question here that says, like, Just Fund provided a budget template. And so you're not required to use that template. You're welcome to, but you don't have to use the template that Just Fund has there. That's optional if it's a helpful guide for you. We got a question here, Dale, about what about the tri-state region, like District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia? Is that considered local?
Yeah, I mean, they all have their own localities now. Let's be clear. I lived in DC for 10 years. You would not put those three of those together. Although there are some things, maybe military, that you might cover all three of them. But it is a geography. It's its own geography with its own issues across those three states and within those three states, or states and localities. So yes, go ahead.
Okay. But on the question of local, Dale, we are getting some pushback that your answer to the question of local is contradicting the definition that Lyon uses and was referenced in the Press Forward guidelines that defines local as news that is from a local community perspective, not necessarily limited by geography. Can we clarify?
Like I said, this is a learning opportunity for us. And so mostly we are thinking about local in terms of geography. In that geography, if you have other groups that are not being served, feel free to apply and talk about how you are serving those groups. But if those groups exist across 5 states, that's not our locality.
Thank you. We have a question here of whether the evaluators actually review the news products and presentations created by the applicants.
That's what
Christina,
we're
you want
paying
to tackle
them to do.
that?
We're paying all our reviewers, people, so that is what exactly they are required to do. Review everything you send.
And I will say that we're going to be intentional about not giving too many applications to any individual reviewer,
Right.
so that they actually do have the time and space in which to thoroughly review the applications and the attachments that are submitted. Okay. Some quick fire answers here for questions we've already gotten. Can we reapply regardless of past acceptance? This is our first time, so nobody's applied before. So everybody should be eligible this round. If you do get the grant, you will likely not be eligible for kind of the next few open call rounds of grants, but that doesn't mean you won't ever be eligible again in the future of this initiative. We already answered that not all of the grants necessarily will be in the same amount. It's going to depend on the capacity of the newsrooms to take on the grants. We are estimating $100,000 over 2 years for each grantee, but there will be case-by-case differences in the amounts that are awarded. And the question of, are symbol or word limits in the length of the application? There's no hard word counts, there's recommended word counts. And so don't worry too much about that as you are working on drafting your applications. Okay, Christina, regarding collaboratives for small rural communities, what if you try to collaborate but have not been able to achieve collaboration? And what if you're viewed as competition by another outlet, not collaborative?
So I want to say that as we think about collaboratives in the context of this open call, it is really about, are you working together to advance the mission of and be able to serve your community? But being part of a collaborative is not necessarily a requirement to apply. So you could apply as your newsroom if that's what I'm thinking you're trying to get at. I think it's okay to tell us that you have tried collaboration and that this is the situation. We
And
understand that.
Yeah, let me just say for the groups that are selected, for the grantees, when we say we want you to collaborate after you've been selected, it might be that collaboration, if you've had trouble doing it locally with a competitor, that's not the group you're going to be in. Maybe you care a lot about audience development, or maybe you care a lot about serving certain types of populations. We may find other groups for you to learn from, being a peer group with, that may not even be in your same geography. You can learn from people not just in your own geography. So we really are thinking about customized cohorts once you have been selected. You might be a cohort of people focused on tech. You could be in multiple states, but you're dealing with some of the same issues across those states. So think like that. We're not going to force you to work with somebody in your locality who has said to you they don't want to work with you. We understand that. We can't change that. We are going to try to find others like you that you can learn from in the space. It may not all be just locally derived.
Perfect, thank you. Christina, what are ways we can prove gaps in coverage?
So this goes back to understanding your landscape and your audience. We want to know what type of research or listening or surveying you have done to show that current news offerings aren't adequately meeting the needs of your communities. So this is one way that you're able to show what does that gap look like.
Perfect, thank you. Dale, I think we've answered this before in the past webinar, but what if we're on the edge on a few of the criteria for the open call? Are we better off submitting an application or not?
What does that mean, on the edge? I tell everybody, at a minimum, fill out the Just Fund profile. Let's start there. So let's say you're going to do that. So then the question is next is, do you apply? Do you qualify for this open call? If you think you're doing original reporting covering some gaps, please go ahead and apply. All it takes away from you is time. And hopefully gives you, think about it also as training. If you've not applied for grants before, think of this as training for the next one. I've worked on grants before. We apply for grants and we don't always get them. But every single one is training for the next one that you're going to apply for that you probably will get. So your call on whether you think it's worth the time to invest in something like this. We've tried to make it as easy as possible, as much as we can for this first one. I understand that, but please, at a minimum, fill out that Just Fund profile.
Perfect, thank you. So we got some questions here. There's actually quite a few newsrooms that their fiscal year end is coming up on June 30th. So they may already have their fiscal year 2025 budget. And so they're asking which one they should include.
Ooh, that's a good question.
I would include the most current one you had, and to be on the safe side, include, what for 24 that's about to end for some of you. And then if you have your planned budget already for fiscal year 2025, include that as well. You can PDF them together and just make sure they're clearly labeled. And I think that covers your basis to show us kind of where you've been this past year and where you're planning to go for the year ahead. That question a lot. Okay.
We have just a few more minutes. So.
Yes, we are coming up on time. There's a lot of open questions here. We'll continue to go through some of these, and then any questions that did not get addressed, feel free to email them over to grants@pressforward.news. We'll try to get you responses. Hopefully, though, even if we didn't answer your specific question, we answered somebody else's question that was like yours. Okay. Is there a way, Christina, to see if they're interested groups, funders in our city, state to form Press Forward local chapters?
So there are, I think news organizations are able to help bring and surface this conversation, especially with funders. And we have seen this happen in some of our chapters, like Chicago, where newsrooms play an active role. At the end of the day, I would also say that local chapters must be funder-led initiatives. So you probably have seen that funders and philanthropy does not move always at the same pace as journalism, as much as we would like them to. So I would just encourage you to keep that in mind, that they are also wrestling with some of the conversations about what does it mean and what do they need to do this, not just for this 1 year, but for a long time. So these are kind of the things that we're all trying to balance. If you have any funders that would like to learn more about local chapters, please send us a note, and I'm happy to have a call with them.
Okay, thank you. Dale, question here. We are a small newsroom, hold on, it keeps moving, based in the South with a national readership and a global writers network. Does the South count as local?
Ooh, we've got all sorts of geographies. I will just say that the South is clearly one that has unique aspects to it. I know we've got some entities that are smaller that are in a particular part of the South, but they're read broader than just that one region. I think that's okay. But we do want to see that you are thinking about what resonates within however you define your local community. If local is 6 states in the South, I bet those 6 states experience some things the same and some things very differently. And so I doubt you're doing reporting that just covers all the 6 states all the time, right? You're probably also doing some hyper local stuff. I would emphasize the hyper local stuff, even if there are times when you are covering issues and you have stories that are broader based than just the hyper local. We understand that, audiences are shifting, how people even define their own world is shifting. But please, as much as you can, talk to us about how do you even understand that? How did you even understand that there's issues across those 6 states that appeal to everybody? Who are you talking to? Give us a sense of how you do that work so that we can have a sense of how local are you.
Perfect, thank you. Christina, if the community you serve through local reporting is an affluent community, but still a news desert in terms of being underserved via local media, is that okay?
I think so. It is different for region to region. So we know that this can look different. So just please tell us how it's underserved and how you are filling that gap.
Perfect. And I'm going to close this out with one more question, Dale, for you. Original reporting has been said a few times. Can you give examples of what the distinction is between reporting and original reporting?
I think we're just trying to distinguish amongst, we have some newspapers that republish other people's work. We're not looking for that, although we understand you sometimes do that in collaborations. There's one story and you share it widely. Are you also doing your own original coverage of a particular issue? Are you going deep in one particular area? Or are you just an entity that publishes what others have done? That would not be original reporting.
Perfect. Thank you. We have about a minute or so to go. Dale, any closing words here? I know we're going to follow up with folks who didn't get their questions answered and try to answer them offline. We'll also be responsive in the grants inbox to make sure that everybody in the final days of working on their application gets the answers they need to complete their applications.
I just want to thank you all for what you're already doing. The ones who are the one person, the all volunteer, the two people, the people who got laid off and you're on your third newspaper or outlet, the people who are trying to figure out as audience changes how to meet those audience needs. We understand that this work is not for the faint of heart. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing this work on behalf of the American public. And just know that we in the foundation world are trying to learn who you are. We're trying to understand and bring other foundations and donors into this space. That is the goal of Press Forward, is to raise the money, but also to raise the profile of what you guys already do. And then also to have conversations with you about how you're able to change in this changing environment. So thank you very much already for what you already do to this point.
Perfect. Thank you.